Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's generally finding that author or book that you may never have heard of before, sort of like the treasure hunt for a reader. The goal from my podcast is to bring to you either those authors or books that you may never have found, but may have been the treasure you've been searching for all along. Today, in episode 19, I bring you author Daniel Jones, otherwise known as the Creature Author. We're going to go over what he's published, maybe a little bit of what he's working on, and what his plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Hey, Adrian, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody, my name is Daniel Jones. I am the Creature Author. So, my novels are action thrillers that fall in the creature feature niche. And basically, it's my passion to bring new life to creatures, monsters, myths that you may or may not be familiar with, and put a whole new shine on everything you've ever known about them. So it's a whole lot of fun what I do.
I can imagine. Why don't you give the viewers a little bit more background just about you in general, maybe some of your likes, what else you do, things you've done in the past, whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, sure. So I actually am someone who grew up all over the world. My parents were military, so I had the pleasure of moving from place to place to place every few years. And that really shaped me a lot. I have a very different worldview than most people, which I definitely used to my advantage.
Yeah.
So some things about me: I am a geeky, nerdy person. I play Magic the Gathering. I play games. I read lots of books. But at the same time, I'm an Eagle Scout. So I go outside, I camp, I have a whole lot of fun. And the things that matter the most to me are just being outside and enjoying the world around me. So I will go to parks, nature sites, and just take it all in, observe
Yeah.
the surroundings and live in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds great. Yeah, my dad was in the military as well, so I was born in Frankfurt, Germany,
Okay.
but I never really had to do the move around because when I was 6 months old, basically we came back, and then I've been in the U.S. ever since. But yeah, I can see, the moving around. It does give you that broader background of things, cultures, experiences, just a lot of different stuff that kind of molds you as you're growing up. So it does give you that different, not only approach, but just outlook on everything as you're coming through. Um, Influences. What were your biggest influences, or what are your influences now that not only shape your writing, but just in general for you? What influences you creatively?
So for me, it's the desire to basically write stories that you haven't heard of before. And it may feel like that's something that's very difficult to do these days. I mean, there's a whole lot of things where it's the same story, it's just a different method of telling it and hitting that particular audience and so on and so forth. But here's my thing about that. Um, let's take fantasy, for example. Um, you're These days, it's like every other story has a dragon in it. Dragon here, dragon there. Um, that was initially what got me into really wanting to showcase everything else, because as everybody can see right behind me, I've got two Hydra novels out right now, and a Hydra is a very, very different animal than a dragon.
Yep.
And that allows me to play around with just things that really are fresh. And that's what's exciting about what I do is I play with animals that force me as a writer to actually have to invent situations that even I haven't heard of yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's an excellent point. That was, one of the things that I absolutely love is when people do things from a different point of view or a different avenue, right? Changing it up so you're not what you usually see. I just did a Halloween special where me and another author, Dr. Spooky, we went over our top 5 horror movies of a bunch of different genres, and a lot of my picks were really because they came from a different approach. I was like, I really appreciate this because it's not the norm. It's not what you normally see, what you normally are used to, and that's where I appreciated it because it's just a different approach. Um, Same thing in my werewolf book I just released. I didn't want it to be the curse or the bite that kind of put it through or having to have the full moon. Again, I just appreciate that approach. So I really not only understand, but I appreciate you coming from that angle of doing that where it is something different. I'm sure you're much younger than I am, so when I grew up, besides cartoons, when I was a kid, I actually grew up watching Godzilla, Gamera, Rodan, all of those. That was what I waited for in the weekends in the morning, and
oh
then
yeah.
back then in the afternoon was Kung Fu Theater, right? So besides the cartoon, that was my growing up. That's my background of what I love. Is that some of the stuff that you actually love too? Because that takes you a little more on that side, and it is different from, like you say, the normal fantasy of the dragons and everything on that side.
Yeah, so I was born in California, and the first um, place that we had to move to after I was born was actually Okinawa, Japan. So I am very familiar with all of it, all of the kaiju. I learned that in my very, very early on years.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep. So yeah. God, Godzilla, Dragon Ball, all of it. I was there when Dragon Ball was airing still in Japan. So
yeah. Yeah,
and
and again, that's a lot of people are going to appreciate where you're coming from this because there is a huge fan base for all of that, and it's not really touched, right? It's basically Godzilla that they're going to see if anybody ever does anything. None of the other ones are touched, so it's really great that you're actually bringing this subgenre back out and actually giving it new life.
it is. And with creature features, just in general, you got to think about it. It started in novels way back before film was even really a thing. You got Bram Stoker Dracula, you got Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein, and the monster. Like, those are the original creature features, and those were books that were written so long ago. So the whole niche started there, and of course you've got, like, when film came along, the idea of just taking insects and making them giant and putting them on the silver screen, that really gave rise to really how creature features developed to become this kaiju thing. And a little bit more recently, like the 1970s, 1980s, you've got some monsters that are much more personal in scale and scope. And those still shape the world today. Alien, Predator, Tremors. Those are the kinds of monsters that really just continue to inspire us in that film genre. So I'm just bringing it back to novels. I'm having a whole lot of fun with it. And Hydra's Wake, this one over here, is a true to form creature feature novel. So the Hydra is in everybody's face from start to finish. and the whole point of it is everybody is just trying to survive. Hydra Tower, I took a little bit of a different direction with that one. Um, Basically exploring the impact of the animal and its attack, sort of taking cues from Shin Godzilla in that sort of sense.
Yeah.
Now we still have to deal with the Hydra, and we get to see all the fun things that go with that. Swords and sorcery is super fun. Um, I had a whole lot of fun with Hydra Tower.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine all the fun you would have for this because again, you're doing something nobody else has touched. So it's really you can just mold it how you want it, right? It's basically right now your world, right? You're bringing it out and you're creating this world. So I can imagine all the fun and just how enjoyable it was just taking it wherever direction you felt like it should go. I just can feel how great that would have been. Um, in terms, let's talk about Wake first because Wake is your first book, correct?
Yes.
Was there a favorite scene in that book? And it doesn't have to necessarily be the scene. It could be how it came about. You know, how you were sitting there and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm thinking of this." But is there something that really stands out that you absolutely love about that book? A moment or a scene?
Yeah. So actually, this has turned out to be one of the more interesting points of the novel. So fairly early on, there's a cut in the middle of the first chapter that moves from one scene to the next. And as you go through that second scene, um, things aren't quite right. And I've had a few readers actually go back to see, did they miss something? And the answer is no. What I have done is something very fun. So, The Hydra's Wake, going back a little bit, Hydra's Wake is a novel that follows a group of people as they try to survive against the Hydra. So, the Hydra uses a hunting mechanism called Hydra's Wake. It is a hallucinogen that it produces off of its body. It does so to disorient its prey so that it could sneak up and eat without a problem. The thing is massive. How is it going to survive? It's not exactly going to live very long if it can't find enough to eat. And so it needs to be able to do that. And the Hydra's Wake is the perfect mechanism to do that. In humans, it causes paranormal and transdimensional effects, reader included.
So so when they're confused, it's because the characters are hallucinating or in a different, I guess,
Yes,
reality at the moment.
at the moment,
Yeah.
when the second scene kind of rolls around and you get into it, there's a few very subtle hints at what has happened, but it's very easy to miss, and that was by design. But things aren't quite right, and they continue to just stay not right until there's an aha moment about a chapter and a half later. So for like some people figure it out like, oh, there's that was clever. But yeah, no. I took a risk in intentionally confusing the reader to have them join the characters. So it's a really fun that was a really fun thing to do with Hydra's Wake and difficult as heck to design, but I'm pleased with how it turned out. And for the readers that have gone through it, they've absolutely enjoyed it.
That's great. Was there on the opposite end? Was there a scene that was very hard, or maybe it was difficult just putting together? You know, as you're writing it.
So that would actually be the same scene.
Same scene. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it was so much fun to work on, but to get it to where it was subtle but not too subtle, but still had that effect where it made the reader notice enough things out of place, but not question too much of it. Because I've had readers just blow through that chapter without questioning it, and then realizing when they get to the aha moment what's happened to them. And that's brilliant as well. But
Yeah.
designing that certainly was not easy. The pacing of the storytelling at that point was difficult to control. Revisions in doing that were an absolute nightmare. I spent at least 4 or 5 months just on finding the right way to present the that little 10,000 word segment there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that in editing got chopped up a lot more, and we still had things to iron out after the editor gave it back. And because he was like, this is a difficult thing to get around. He wanted to throw it all out. But we found a balance of making it work. So that was exciting to do.
Yeah, that's great. Did you do any specific research for the book? Was there anything you needed to look up or something you wanted to get a little deeper into for the book?
Not for Hydra's Wake, no. That was I pretty much knew what it was going to be front to back before I really put pen to paper.
Yeah.
The the ability is so unique that it presents the rules that go into it. I had to basically figure out how the story was going to go. I had to plot map it out pretty heavily.
Yeah.
There were still quite a few pantsing moments getting through that and connecting the dots. So pantsing versus plotting, Hydra's Wake is a masterpiece of both.
Did you find okay, so as you said, you kind of had the story in your head, right? And you kind of knew what you wanted that story to be. Did you find yourself um, I guess the word is kind of weaving off of that a little bit in terms of did the story change itself a little bit as you were doing it, or did it basically kind of stay within the structure you originally planned, and it's just like small things that kind of evolved as you went on?
So they're actually this was one of those projects where the premise was strong from the start. Um, when the premise works on the level that it does with Hydra's Wake, you don't have to change too much, which does not happen for us very often.
Yeah.
So that was a pleasant thing. I mean, I've written a lot of projects before this one, and absolutely none of them were as solid as what Hydra's Wake came to be. Hydra Tower is a very different story, though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's kind of it's interesting on both sides of it, right? It's interesting when, like you say, it is so set. You really have it set that it just kind of moves its way through, and that's just its own interesting journey as you go through that. But on the opposite end, when it kind of evolves and changes along the way, that's just as enjoyable, right? Because sometimes you're going along for the ride as well, even though you're writing it, you're kind of going, okay, where is this going to go? And it's almost like you're reading the book for the first time because you're kind of following with it. And one author mentioned it's almost like you're getting dictated to sometimes, and you're just typing or writing away. But both sides, are very enjoyable when you love doing these things, right? It's just a different approach, but both of them just have so much fun and just so much enjoyment that you can get out of either side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hydra Tower is definitely on the flying by the seat of the pants side of things. That evolved in ways that were interesting. So the concept behind Hydra Tower was one thing and what it turned out, it changed a whole lot along the way, even at the speed that I wrote it at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just going back to Hydra Tower for a moment here, this novel was very interesting. So after I wrote a Hydra book for science fiction, which is Hydra's Wake, I wanted to give one to fantasy. Um, that became Hydra Tower. And the whole premise of it was, let's take the most dragon of fantasy stories and put a Hydra in it. So that would be the princess and the dragon archetype. You know the story. You've heard
Yeah.
it 1,000 times. Princess in the tallest tower protected by a dragon. Knight goes in, chops up dragon, saves day. Done. All right, so let's put a Hydra in there first off. And since I flipped the script on that, it's like, you know what? Let's change things up a little more. So I looked at our knight in shining armor and went, hey, bud, you rolled a nat one. So you're in the tower this time. So we took the prince, we locked him up, and the princess is going to have to go in and do all the hero work this time. And arguably, it's tougher because any knight in shining armor can down a dragon. It is literally a Herculean feat to go up against a Hydra. So things are a little different there. And how it evolved along the way. Originally, it was going to be something where I just poke fun at fantasy tropes along the way, and it took on a much more serious-minded tone and kind of delved into how Shin Godzilla was, where you explore a lot of the politics revolving around this thing's presence, how it affects the world, and now all of a sudden I've got this princess who's going around getting allies trying to figure a way to take this thing down to save her kingdom. And I did so in such a way where I still take a lot of tropes from fantasy as a whole, and I either flip the script or I do the exact opposite with them. So, quick question for you.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen someone go for a wish or a wishing item and have to use that wish to undo something that happened along the way to getting that item or wish?
I would say in every story that the wish is part of it.
Yeah.
There's always you always have to wind up using it as shit. I have to change this other thing that happened and not really use it for what I would want to use it for.
And that's exactly how I fix it.
Yeah.
So we've got one character, surprisingly not the main one either, who is gunning for a wishing item that happens to be in the castle occupied by this Hydra. And they're like, I have super skills in combat. I can help you out, but I want that. Okay, cool, done. Welcome to the team. So, yeah, it's like I take a whole bunch of tropes like that and flip them on their heads.
Did you do any sort of like Easter eggs? Because you like you said, you're going through a bunch of different tropes that are normally in those stories. But did you find yourself tossing any Easter eggs in there where somebody may go, "Oh, wait a minute, I know where that's from, or I know what that reference is to." Did you find yourself wanting to do that, or just happen to do that, or did you just kind of stay away from that?
So that was actually part of the original point. I was going to put those things all over the place.
Yeah.
And what ultimately happened, because the whole tone of the story changed, um, I felt that it deserved its own respect to just kind of stay isolated. So I actually had to work against doing that. So yeah, I found myself putting some in, and I'd be going back in the revision process, going, all right, let's get rid of that and fix it and put something that is in universe for it.
Yeah.
even if it is a standalone novel. Hydra Tower is what it is. I don't plan on expanding on it. It flips everything in the book on its head. It's there. It's a thing. It's fun. And I'm excited that people are slowly discovering it. So that's a huge win.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this book, same question that I asked on Wake. Was there a favorite scene, and was there a hard scene that you had in the book?
So the favorite scene would definitely be the finale. Because one thing I don't really explore with Hydra's Wake is the whole head slicing thing.
Yeah.
Hydras are famous because you cut one head off and two will grow in its place. The Hydra in Hydra's Wake, I mean, you can see from the cover behind me, it's just so massive that what in the hell can take a head off that thing? It's not happening.
Yeah.
Not with steampunk technology, not without like rail guns or unusually modernistic weapons for that era. Hydra Tower, it's swords and sorcery. I've got magic. I've got so many different things that can do that. So by the time the finale comes around, the Hydra has like a ridiculous amount of heads. It's big. It's powerful. It's an acid spitting monster from hell. And just, I go wild with it. There's mage on mage fighting going around that just feels completely wild. And we've got this army trying to pin down and defeat a Hydra while that's going on. We've got ship battles. We've got the assault on the final island where the castle is. It's a great scene. It was so much fun to write. And yeah, it is exactly what it is. As far as the difficult side of Hydra Tower, though, I would have to attribute that to the political balance that went into the novel. And that really kind of stretches the whole thing. Some points it gets a little slow, and I had to find ways to keep it interesting, keep the tempo up, but at the same time, balance it with keeping the political to their world points that make that such a situation. So that's not really my realm of things, despite being someone who's moved all over the world. I can understand geopolitical consequences and reactions for various things and come up with those. But even so, it's very different to just kind of explore that for this kind of a situation. So
Yeah, and you said you did do maybe some research for Tower. What did you find yourself researching for that?
I included a lot of minor mythological monsters that people definitely haven't heard of unless they live in very specific regions of the world. So yeah, I actually went exploring what are monsters that are out there that even I haven't heard of. So plenty of those are in there, and it's a monster book. It's great for people who just want a fun, wild, out of this world read.
They both sound great. I haven't had a chance to read them yet, but I definitely will. I picked up Wake. I haven't picked up Tower yet, but I will check them both out. Question for you though, because essentially, again, you're creating this new world, right? It's a new world that you're not really coming into. It's something you're kind of creating and building.
Yeah.
Have you thought about other avenues for this world, whether those are, say comics or graphic novels or other aspects that you're going to kind of maybe approach? Because again, stuff like this lends itself to a lot of different avenues to kind of go after. Or is that maybe, tier two of the overall full plan, and you're still on tier 1 in terms of the books and the story building.
Yeah, so Hydra Tower is something that I'm kind of finished with. My writing process when I do things is I will focus on a massive project, and in between portions of that project, I will focus on something smaller to kind of give myself a mental reset. So Hydra's Wake is actually the start of the Wake series, which was a very large project to get down in draft form. And in between each book of the Wake series, I wrote a standalone novel. And I've decided I'm going to go ahead and just release them in that order. So in between Hydra's Wake and the upcoming Frost Wake, I wrote Hydra Tower. So Hydra's Wake came out, then Hydra Tower, and next up is Frost Wake. And then after that is a science fiction military environment creature feature called Toxima Territory. That'll be super fun. And then we get Wake 3, next standalone, Wake 4, next standalone, and so on and so forth. So they don't all take place in the same universe. All the standalones are just my way of giving myself a mental reset and allowing me to explore other stories that I want to write or have premises that are just itching in the back of the head that need to get out. So that's how that happened. Hydra's Wake, the Wake series, I do have some pretty major plans for that. Between my two novels, it is definitely the one that outsells the other by a lot. So I am definitely planning on a huge expansion for that. I've been going to conventions for a little now, and my next one is Farpoint Convention here in Hunt Valley, Maryland. And I'll actually be doing a huge announcement going over what the future of the Wake series is going to look like. That includes things like the second edition of Hydra's Wake and the various formats that it will be available in, as well as what we can expect from Frost Wake and the rest of the series going forward. Basically explaining the release schedule for things like the different language translations, the audiobooks, and some other secret projects that we'll be unveiling when that time comes. So yeah, it's huge, exciting, and I'm absolutely honored to be in a position where my work is reaching so many people that I can really give it this kind of treatment.
Yep. And you said that's in February, correct?
Yeah, February 9th.
Yeah, this for the viewers that are watching, we're recording this a little earlier, but this is going to air right around the mid-December time frame. And why don't you let everybody know you have a promo coming up at the end of the month, at the end of December. Just kind of give everybody a heads up of what you have planned and what you're going to have coming up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So from December 27th to December 31st, the last 5 days of the year, I'll be giving Hydra's Wake away for free on Amazon. So yeah, if you want to grab yourself the coolest creature feature book around, that is definitely the time to do it. The ebook will be free for those 5 days. That'll be from Wednesday to Sunday to finish out the year. And hopefully by that point, you'll have unwrapped a shiny new Kindle to enjoy it on. So yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. I wanted to make sure we mention that because for the viewers, again, I'll leave all the links down below. At the time of this airing, that promo won't be available, but you will have the link for the ebook and paperback and everything. And when the promo kicks in, that'll be available on that link as well. Go going forward, right? So you have, basically you're going to be doing like your creature feature phase 1, phase 2, kind of like a Marvel release in terms of what you have going on, right? Every year during a convention, kind of what the plans are.
Yeah.
Is there anything, maybe back of mind, something shelved? Is there something else that you've thought about? I really kind of want to do this that maybe is not in this world, in this subgenre, that you may want to do later on.
So I think every author, writer, creator of any sort of storytelling, they will always have that kind of stuff in the back of the head. I know
Yeah.
I do.
Yep.
But I also know that I'm a creative piece of work, and I can definitely make that crossover into my niche if I need to. So yeah, there are some ideas and concepts and fun things that I would like to explore, but I haven't quite figured out how to either make the premise work as well as I expect for what I do.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily take the writing process as seriously as I should, but I do take the storytelling as seriously as it gets. So for me, my threshold of if a premise works for a story that needs to be told, that threshold is pretty high. I've had some pretty good ideas that could carry a novel if you shoehorn a handful of things. And if you have to shoehorn anything, I'm just not going to completely commit on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just my personal thing. I want to tell people stories that they will fully enjoy.
So besides the creature features, right, which involves a bunch of different aspects, are you a big horror fan as well? Because, like you said, you mentioned Frankenstein and Dracula and those from the early novels. Is horror a genre that you kind of get yourself into as well? And do you, maybe not now, but do you have maybe some of those aspects in the future, if you are a horror fan, that you'll maybe start bringing into some of your novels?
I mean, horror is part of that thing. When you're dealing with the creature feature niche, I mean, you're a person facing a mouthful of teeth. That's going to scare the shit out of someone. And
You would think, right?
yeah, I mean, that it's inherent. So even in Hydra Tower, Hydra's Wake, both of them have aspects of horror that weave themselves into it. So yeah, I mean, that's something that's just it goes with the territory.
Yeah.
Just look at the cover of Hydra's Wake there for a moment. Just zoom in on the head closest to the Hydra there. Its mouth is wide open. That fang is taller than the cabin of the airship. I mean, if you look out the window and see that, it might not go so well.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's going to at least give you a jump scare. At worst, that is just your nightmare fuel.
So again, I know you have the promo coming up at the end of the year. You have the convention coming up in February. And again, I don't want you to share anything that you don't want to share yet, especially if there's something you're saving for the convention. But is there a time frame for maybe the next work from you that you're kind of hoping for, aiming for, or something that you have planned currently?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are falling in line and finishing up. The planning process of organizing all these different things, hopefully they'll be finished by the time this comes around, and I'll have everything set in stone for that. If not January, I'll have to make those plans and adjustments finalized. But yeah, so that's all up in the air right now. The work is being done. Everything is off to the different people that it needs to be. Frostwake and Hydra's Wake second edition are with the editor right now. So those are things that are just kind of wrapping up. I've already got the cover art for Frostwake at this point. It's exciting. That'll be one of the big reveals at Farpoint Con. We'll get to see that cover. And the same artist that did Hydra's Wake, Ivan Zahn, he designed it. He outdid himself. He does an amazing job.
Yeah.
I'll give you that link as well, just as a resource.
Okay.
To those of you who are aspiring authors or looking to go down the indie road, Hydra's Wake has sold well over 2,000 copies already, and it's not even been out a full 2 years yet. It came out May 1st, 2022. Now, 2,000 copies as an independent author is a lot of books to sell. That's not a joke. It's not bestseller stuff, but it is a lot more than the 3 to 5 copies that a lot of people tend to sell a month. And when you add that all up, that's like 36 to 60 copies a year. So 2,000 copies over a year and a half, that blows that out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that success is 2 things. Take your project seriously. That includes the cover art. Do not half-ass it. You are not as great as Canva as you think you are. There is a difference between, oh, that's neat, and that's epic. And I'll tell you, if you put those 2 covers, that's neat and that's epic, next to each other on a bookshelf, I can solidly tell you which one will win.
Yep.
So let a professional artist do their thing to bring your work to life.
Yep.
And it's more important in selling the novel than the editing. Although the editing is important in that it stops the novel from coming back. The editing is what keeps the novel sold. So that's important. But those are things that there are professionals out there for that do those jobs. There's a village out here. Use it. Use us. Authors have resources, and they don't necessarily cost as much as others. And use the network. Don't Rambo this. Don't do it one man on your own.
Yeah.
Because you will find that the road is so much tougher doing that. And yeah, those are my 2 things. Be professional about it. Use the village of resources that are here to help you. And just be ready to work with a lot of people. To get novels to look like they're trad published, feel like they're trad published from the indie side, it's a lot of work. It's a headache, and it certainly is time consuming on top of everything that you've already done to get to whatever point you're at. And that can feel like it's too much, but I can tell you it is worth it. 2,000 copies sold, over 4,000 copies, free copies given out through free promos and such. I can tell you that 6,000 plus people have a copy of Hydra's Wake. That's pretty massive. And there's a lot of momentum behind it to where I can plan for bigger and larger things. And you'll see the results of that at the Wake series announcement at Farpoint Con. And if you're ever at one of the conventions that I'm at, you'll see that schedule at creatureauthor.com. You'll find everything that I do on creatureauthor.com, including laying out the process for how to self-publish your work, what to expect, what the royalties look like, what the math is, and just huge resources that I offer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, you make an excellent point in terms of the cover, right? In terms of the presentation, because I come from a furniture design background of furniture that I've designed selling online, right? And
Yeah.
you come to a point where you understand that the first thing, your first selling point, because you're not a store, people are not picking it up and looking at it, is that photo, right? That photo is what's going to catch them as they're scrolling, right? And like you said, if you put the money and you put the effort behind that cover, that's where you're going to catch somebody maybe ahead of somebody, like you said, that used Canva and went more a simpler route. It's worth the money, right? You're catching a lot more eyes, and eyes for anything sold online is the most important thing. And then your second point, with it being the editing being secondary but still important, is also very true, because again, if I take the furniture analogy for it, and you have that great looking photo where the piece is in the living room the way you want it, styled the way you want it, the whole thing, that sells them, right? The editing part of the book is basically when they get that furniture piece home and they go, oh my God, this thing's horrible to sit on. There, you lost that, right? You lost that because you're going to get the reviews that say this thing is like sitting on concrete. And that's the editing part, right? You can catch them. You can catch them with that great cover, that great photo, but the editing has to be there to support it, to keep it rolling, like you said, right? And they both are very, very important. And if you want to do this long term, or again, maybe not, hopefully as your primary source of income, but at least as a good solid secondary source of income, it's that extra effort, that extra, extra little bit of money you have to put in there for that to go in that direction.
Yeah, and it, like Ivan Zahn, he charges a little more than what most people can afford, and that's fair. But to that point, we have resources like Fiverr. There are plenty of artists who are on social medias looking for people to support them who do commissions, and they'll do it. They'll do a pretty decent job. Quite a few of them can, and they'll be a lot cheaper than Ivan. But the point is that they know what they will more or less know what their skills are, what they can do, what they are doing, and you just have to trust that because you're paying them and you're working with them, that they share your goal in bringing this awesome story to life.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that's often the motivation for them, is they want to do a good job. We're people. We want to do the right thing more often than not, despite everything else in the world that makes it feel like it's on fire. But yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the link down there for him, for people that are looking for cover art. I'll put the one down for my cover art as well. I used Betty Martinez from Reedsy, and basically I came in, I knew I wanted to have an old 50s horror poster look for the werewolf, and I kind of gave her my ideas and thoughts, and she just went after it, and I love the cover that she came up with. And that's what they do, right? You give them, because basically most of us are probably not artists in general, so we're not going to be able to say this is what is going to catch somebody's eye. That's their specialty, right? But if you can give them that and you find the right one, you'll get what you're looking for, probably better than what you envisioned in your mind to begin with. And it's worth that money to get that, right? It really, really is.
It is. And I mean, the bottom line is the sales speak for themselves on that note. Um,
Yeah.
the developing this from being just a side hobby of, oh, I've got a good story to tell, I think people will enjoy it too, oh wait, people are actually reading it and enjoying it. That's the bridge that um, really makes it real. And I stop and take a look back at the road that I've taken to get here. My journey to being published was a pretty long one. So I actually started in the trad road for Hydra's Wake and went through the whole query process. I did land an agent, and that agent did talk to a big publisher that was willing to put Hydra's Wake out there. But they wanted to basically take everything that made it a creature feature and turn it into a generic brand X sci-fi thing.
Yep.
Um, a story that's been told a million times over, just repackaged in a new sticker. And I had to make the heartbreaking choice to step back and say that that's not what Hydra's Wake can be. That's not what it should be. That's not how it will succeed. And at the time, I don't know what the fuck I was thinking, or I'll let you edit that out.
That's fine.
One, two, three. And at the time, I don't know what the heck I was thinking, but you just know when a story is going to work a certain way. I had no proof it was going to do as well as it did, and I don't have any idea if it would have done better, but I do know that had I accepted that offer, I don't think I would have seen as much as I'm seeing now.
And you wouldn't have been as happy, right? Because it wouldn't have been the story you wanted to tell. You ultimately had in your mind to tell.
Yeah, I probably would have junked the series at that point,
Yeah.
to be honest. But I'm glad I took the road that I did. After I turned that down, I had a heart to heart with the agent, and they sort of walked me down the process and gave me a lot of resources on how to do it right. Just because, and look, self publishing has become so available, so accessible to everybody. And that's a good thing. It's a great thing to make it to where anyone has to the opportunity to make this happen. Put the work in and make it come true, make it come out. Um, but it's doing it right that ultimately makes a difference, and that's the harder part of the whole process, is pacing yourself and understanding that if your goal is to succeed in a financial matter with this kind of thing, you got to step back, you got to pace it, and you got to treat it pretty much the way the trad publishers treat it.
Yeah.
With the indie road, obviously, you're going to take the mantle of doing all of that, all of the things that they do, you're now doing, and that's not easy. It's not meant to be.
Right.
There's a reason why they have entire teams and huge company resources on doing a lot of this stuff. So doing it right as an indie author is something that is time consuming. I mean, like, I've already got 10 more novels written, ready to go through the process of it all. If I wanted to, I could just run them through a few grammar check programs, fix a few things by hand, and slap them out grammatically correct with half decent covers. But they wouldn't move.
Yeah.
So I got to step back, and this is a thing where it'll be one or two novels a year until they do well enough for me to increase the pacing of that.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I'm at, is like with Hydra's Wake Second Edition, a preview of things to come from the Wake series announcement. I've got a couple different language translations lined up for it. I've got the audiobook lined up for it, and I found a much more professional editor who understands the niche, the topics, and the things that I want to do a lot better. And just having access to him is a huge thing, to where this story will go from as good as what I could do it to something that can go toe to toe with some of the best in the trad industry. And that's an exciting thing to do.
Yep.
And because I've been patient, setting aside a lot of my own money, setting things to the side, and just working so many overtime hours to make it come true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where that's what you got to do.
Yeah. It's very, the whole point you're making is very interesting, because I probably harp on this way too much in this podcast series that I do, but I always think it's important, because I always try to say, for every new author coming in, is to find your voice, right? And that's what you did. You have your voice. It's unique voice. It's one of a kind voice. There's nobody else really doing that. And you were able to find a agent, but the publisher wanted to change that, right? And
Yeah.
I always harp on the fact is, every voice will have an audience. You got to find the audience, or the audience needs to find you. But that is the beauty of the indie side of it, is because you don't have to change your voice, but you have all the hard work you have to put in to make it happen. But again, a lot of times I try to stress the fact of, don't let the the denials, or when they turn you down, or they don't accept, when you get I can't even think of the word right now, when you're querying out there, and you don't get picked up, don't let that put you down, because again, usually it's one person reading it. And when you have a unique voice like you do, and you're coming in from a different direction from anybody else doing it, it's hard to find somebody else that is going to hook up with you and see the vision of your voice there. And it's worked for you going that, and you took a chance, but it's worked for you, because your voice is valid, and you're able to find the audience for your voice, and it's there for almost everybody, any subgenre, whatever they want to go to.
Yeah.
It's not easy, right? And it takes time, and you just have to, patience is probably the most important thing to be able to have, because it does take time. It's just not going to happen right away, unless luckily, like you were able to catch on, your audience understood it quickly and was able to catch on to it. But it takes time. It really does just take time to build that through.
It does. And like I said, this was originally written a very long time ago. The premise for it, this is probably something that a lot of people don't bring up too much about. Your voice can be powerful, but if the premise of your novel is not that strong, you'll find that your voice will not be enough to carry the story. Your story itself, the premise, the plot, those have to be at that level as well. And for some people, that can be really difficult. And the advice that I have with that is, talk to your friends, talk to your family, just run the ideas through and find out which topics lead to passionate conversations. And that's really what started with the Hydra, really. Even though the Wake series doesn't stay with the Hydras, it started with one, simply because of a Magic the Gathering game where me and an opponent, we dropped out of the Friday Night Magic just to play on our own off to the side, because I ran a green deck that had a whole bunch of Hydras in it. And we talked about how the art was so cool and how it's such an underutilized creature just across storytelling, film, books, comics, graphic novels,
Mhm.
anything. Um, take a dragon out and put a hydra in, it becomes a whole new thing, and it could be as awesome, it could be better. um, and yet at the same time, I don't see too many scenarios where it would be worse. um,
Yep.
so yeah, that's really what started that is, um, I wanted to write a story that was a creature feature that involved a hydra, and um, started asking questions and just had conversations with people on what ideas are cool and lead to just sort of the passionate interest of, oh, hey, this would hold someone's attention, and that someone is not me. So there must be something there. And you take a whole bunch of those ideas and you compile them together, and you stick to that premise as best as you can. And sometimes it works out really well, sometimes it doesn't. I've written stories where both have um, been great and both have been worse, and it's just like, okay. Of course, the stories where the premise just can't hold up to snuff, there's a T file for those, unfortunately. But if you are willing to accept that a premise can't hold the story through, chances are your readers are going to feel the same way, and that can stop the growth of an author. Unfortunately, we see that all the time in the writing community on Twitter, Threads, and so many others. Um, that's not to discourage people. That's just to be brutally honest. It's that your voice is unique. Everybody's voice is unique. That awesome voice of yours needs to be paired with an equally strong idea. That is where that is the firepower that any aspiring author needs. And even authors who are published who are struggling, take a step back and look at the premise of what you're writing. Is it something that people can get passionate about? Or is it really just one or two loose, neat things that um, have a couple of shoehorned plot points to try and just showcase those neat things? Now, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if you're trying to make it big, it's just not going to work.
Yeah. You make something like that, maybe a short story, a collection of short stories, because it's just not going to carry itself through, right? And
Yeah.
it goes back to with almost anything, you need to practice, right? You're never gonna come in, write the novel, put it out there, and say, okay, it's perfect. You gotta grow, you evolve, you grow, you get better, you figure out what you're doing wrong, and you just keep going at it. It's just you can't expect to just come in and do it, right? It's just not going to work that way.
No, and thankfully AI can't do it at this point yet either. I
Yeah.
as hard as it tries, as hard as anyone tries, and I have run into. I read a lot. I have run into a couple first draft releases that are just like, okay, that's a really hard read to slog through, and you get the dreaded DNFs, do not finish,
Yeah.
out of that. And for me, it's I get it. It's tough. There when you start putting money towards an unknown thing, yeah, nobody likes doing that. Unfortunately, that's kind of where it goes.
Yeah.
There's an idea of if you build it, they will come. That is true for everything but our industry. And Yeah, that's the worst advice that I could give. Please do not follow that. The next worst advice I could give you is don't judge a book by its cover. We already talked about why.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, those are two things that make sense everywhere but here.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I mean, really, the biggest thing it's again is you could have an amazing cover, you could have an amazing work, right?
Yeah,
The premise, the story, everything could be just top notch. But then it comes down really again to eyes, right? Is it even getting seen, which is a whole another aspect of it, and is very difficult, right? Are you even getting eyes on your product? And that's again, where even the traditionally published have the same issue is, does it get seen? Is it getting seen on any list? Is it getting in front of anybody? Is anybody even finding it? So again, it's not necessarily, you want to hit all the points you discussed. You want to make sure you're putting in the effort. You want to make sure you're taking it seriously. You want to make sure you're putting in your best, product that you can put out there. But then even all of that, like you said, you get all of that done, you're still not sure because you just don't know, is it going to get seen, right? And
yeah,
it's the sales, like you were mentioning, it's very difficult for indie authors to get the sales, and you have great sales for your book.
yeah,
But again, you don't want to automatically associate that with, oh, my book sucks or nobody likes it. Sometimes it's just not seen. It's just not getting seen, and that's just a completely whole another avenue and aspect to being an author and writing a book.
yeah. So that actually gets to what happens after you're published. Everything I talked about up to you brought up that point is really the beforehand
Yeah.
process. Everything getting up to it happened, but once you get to it happened, and look, that is an emotional high that you and I know all too well. There
Yep.
is no feeling like that in the world. It is an emotional high that gives you self confidence like no other. It is a feeling and an experience that is worth chasing down. It is a sensation that you did not know will hit you in the way that it does. And
Yep.
it is the happiest, strongest, most powerful feeling that it will make you feel for a very long time. And there are not too many life moments that you or anyone really will encounter that lead up to the creation of something like that. It's a big deal. It hits different, and it is completely worth chasing. Once you've had that, though, yeah, it becomes a marketing game, and that's a different skill set that absolutely no ordinary person is ready for.
Yep.
Um, most of us did not go to business school. Most of us have an idea of what we buy, but we don't really know how we sell. And that, yeah, that's a different skill set altogether and a different challenge. And social media is free, but it's not as effective as we all wish it was.
Yeah.
Um, Even paid resources, they come with a learning curve. They come with having to dump a lot of money into just figuring it out firsthand to learn. And I mean, when we're limited on that resource, we're struggling, and it took so much to get it out. Putting that much more to make it successful, that's really the harder part.
Yeah. It
I
really
mean,
is.
you look at that banner behind me, that with the stand, this shirt. I mean, these are cost materials. I mean, even author copies, these things are like $5 a
Yeah.
piece. And when you're bringing 100 of them, I mean, that's $500 that you dropped. Um, Another 300, and then you've got convention fees if you go to those. If not, you have to figure out how to really sell them. Um, Websites can be free, but good websites often aren't. Um, Unless you went to school for building websites and you have that experience, then cool, great on you. I did not do that, um, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's you have to pick up a whole new set of skills that themselves are full-time jobs, all crammed
Yes.
into just such a short span of time that it can feel like you're pounding your head against the wall.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's tough, but it's just part of the process. And take it to heart that you'll be learning so much more than you anticipated when you're going through this process of marketing. Um, Free promos, they're great for reviews. Yes, it works. Does it feel dirty to give the book away for free? Yes, but the first time only. After that, you realize that, oh, that worked. That actually helped. And then it becomes a thing where, like me, I'll do it once or twice a year, um, just to get those boosts in, and I'll see trickling down effect that goes from there.
Yeah.
Um, Utilize every free resource you can. It's difficult to keep up on it. It's difficult to maintain it. But um, like me, I will go out into city squares. Like I live here in Baltimore, Maryland. We have the Inner Harbor, which is a public space that is filled with a bunch of people. You go out there wearing a shirt with your book cover on it, if it's as awesome as either of these two things, and you just stand there handing out business cards with a QR code to the Amazon site and
Hmm.
go up to people and go, "Hey, I'm a local author. Do you read books?" And that starts, or however you want to start the conversation, and that gets people talking, and you may sell more than you realize just doing that. And the only thing I've spent doing that is parking fees and time. But by doing things like that, yeah, no, it works. It helps. It
Yep.
does a lot. But you have to get creative in that kind of thing. And the method that I just talked about, that's not introvert friendly. So if you have that barrier with you,
It makes it very difficult.
it can. And that's where another free resource comes in. Get your friends to help if you can.
Yeah.
Um, there's always that one person who can be super chatty, has the gift to gab. Um, Use them if you have to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, those are all excellent points because I get a lot of people. I don't know if they fully understand the entire process, right? To get it going, to get a cover, to have it edited, to get it out there, to get, like you said, to get your copies, to do marketing material, to get it eyes on it. There's just all these steps along the way that are probably more than most people have even thought of, other than the fact that, oh, I want to write a book. There's all these things that are involved with that to make it successful. Anybody could write it, like it, but is it just going to sit there and nobody's really going to pick it up? For you to actually be able to get it out there, whether it's good or not, you have to be able to do all these other things and be creative, find these other avenues to go after to really get it out there.
yep. And that all comes down to what your goal is.
Yeah.
I've talked to, and I'll step back a bit and reel it in. I've talked to a lot of authors on Twitter, Facebook, threads that they just want to complete the process and say, I did it. I am an author. And I mean, some people just have that as their goal. And that's perfectly fine. That's awesome. And it's attainable. It's there. It's yours. Go for it. All you need to do is invest in the time, and you will have that win to cross off your bucket list. And if you happen to succeed doing that unexpectedly, then hey, that's awesome for you.
Yep.
And but yeah, if it's not the point, if you're out there just writing things so that people can see it and enjoy it because it makes you feel good, there's absolutely nothing that should stop you from doing that. These steps to the process that I talked about, they delve into more along the lines of making it to where, like me, I'm not trying to be a bestseller. I really am not. I'm just trying to make this to where it's a thing that self-sustains,
Yeah.
because doing this was expensive. And if it can pay for itself going forward, and I can take all that money that I saved to do this and put that much more to other things, that would be great. And that's all I want, is just for this to be this self-sustaining thing where I can get as many people to enjoy it as possible without it having to take a complete toll on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you have to, I guess, look at within yourself and say, what do you want to do with this, right? Because it's almost like, if you take sports into consideration, right?
Yeah.
NFL, how many players actually make it to the NFL, right? How many authors are fully sustainable as an author? That's their primary income. There is a chunk, but is it the great majority? No. So you have to figure out, where are you? Are you that player that's just going to hang around for 14, 15 years, get that income to be able to do what you love, and not have to do anything else during that period? That, I mean, probably for most of us, that's what we, like you said, be able for it to sustain itself, so you can keep doing, pay for the covers, pay for the editing, pay for the marketing for the next book, just kind of keep maintaining itself, is what you would really hope for, strive for. And then really, if you can get to that next level, that's a dream for all of us. But you can't make that your primary goal, because it's very limited in terms of how many it happens in.
Yeah, there was, I forget what the actual number was, but like if you look at how many people are accepted on the bestsellers list every year, that number is not a lot. And you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of books coming out every year.
Yeah.
So that skews that reality a bit. It's a crazy low number of people that will see this thing just make it to where they become the next Stephen King, Colleen Hoover, J.K. Rowling, take your pick.
Yeah.
My personal is Michael Crichton, but yeah, no, I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah. I want to remind the viewers that have been watching. I will leave the links for all of your work below, your website, anything else that pops up. If anything becomes available, maybe not as an actual book or stuff, but other stuff that becomes available in terms of links or stuff, by the time this airs, we'll make sure to put that down below as well. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed what you're bringing out there. I really, again, I truly respect when anything comes from a different point of view, different perspective, different avenue, and not really doing the same, right? And I really respect that completely, and I really look forward to see what you have coming up going forward, and just wish you all the best. And in the two books you have out there right now, and the stuff that's going to be coming up later on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you, and you as well. We are in a tough industry, and we're going to go out there and we're going to do our best.
Yep.
And to you as well. Take the holidays, enjoy it. Christmas is around the corner if you're into that. Everybody's got a whole lot of new things coming around. And then we've got the new year in 2 weeks and a day. So yeah, new year, new you. Make that dream come true. Set the goal. It's there. It's doable.
Absolutely. To the viewers again, please don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification so you don't miss all these amazing authors coming up, and all the episodes I have up to this point, and I actually have going into next year as of right now already recorded. If you have a comment for either Daniel or myself, questions or anything, please feel free to leave them below. We'd love to hear from you. If there's something you enjoyed, or like I said, a question for either of us, we'd love to see those down below. And again, just want to thank you, Daniel, for coming on. I truly enjoyed the conversation, finding out more about what you're working on and the books in general, and I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an honor being on, and I'm certain I'll be on again sometime in the future if you'll have me. So yeah, we'll be back at this when there's some new, exciting, and fun things to talk about. And in the meantime, to everybody, happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
And thank you again, viewers, for watching. Goodbye.